Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back with you on another podcast on Alabama football. Lance and I are just so pleased to be able to bring this to you each and every week. Thank all of you who listen in, and we look forward to sharing our perspective, this fresh new perspective on Alabama sports, all things Alabama here on the DC Capstone Report. And right now we're concentrating on Alabama football. Well, today on the podcast, we're going to take a look at our first segment at the state of the team. Where are we right now in this offseason preparation for our first game? In the second segment, we're going to take a look at the offense and give a review of the last scrimmage that happened last Saturday. And in the third segment, we're going to take a look at the defense and look at a review of the scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball from last Saturday.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com.
Well, it's great to have me back talking about football. This past weekend, there was some football on TV. You know, Alabama's not playing yet, but guess what? 11 days. We're 11 days away from kickoff against Missouri. 6 p.m. on September the 26th there. Going on the road to face the Missouri Tigers. So we have been in off-season preparation mode. And this past week, we ended that last week. The football team did with a scrimmage that took place on Saturday, September the 12th. A lot of great things came out of that scrimmage, and it's a good time for you to get a grasp if you're a coach or a player on where you are. And right now, what the state of the Alabama team looks to be in good shape. 11 days from kickoff, things are going as planned. Number one, the most significant thing is there are no significant injuries to report. No significant injuries to report. And that's a big thing. This time last year, we all know that we were sitting here this time last year before the first game, with injuries that had taken place and knocked out some of our best players on defense that caused us to have a struggle at times replacing them with young players. So this has been a good off season to get in preparation, and I think it's a challenging off season because there was not a spring practice and there's been no really a fall camp. This has all been put together on the fly, so to speak. But I think we have to give credit where credit is due, and of course it starts with Coach Saban and his organization and the process. But he has the strength and conditioning coaches have done a really excellent job of getting the players in strength and conditioning shape. And we say that, but it's really more of a sports science department now. This is, with Coach Ballou, Dr. Ray, they have jobs within the strength and conditioning program that have made really a difference in what the team looks like and the way they are in shape. You got Jeff Allen and all of his training staff. They have been an integral part of getting the players, keeping them healthy, getting them to recover well. And then you got Amy Bragg and the nutritional staff that continually keeps the nutrition on a level that's just like a professional level and keeping the players well. All of that together, the sports and science department has done such a good job of getting the team in the position that they're in now, with no significant injuries throughout all the weeks of practice that's taken place. At the scrimmage, there were no significant injuries. There was Coach Saban mentioned about, I believe he mentioned LeBron Ray, so I'll call him by name, that possibly had a little nick up on an injured leg. It was held out a little bit, but it's not significant. He'll be back, and barring any further problems, he'll be able to go in the first game against Missouri. So really most of the team is in really, really good shape. And I heard from someone, I think it's important that I mention it to all of the listeners out there. One of the reasons behind this is the path that seems to be taken by the strength and conditioning coach, or say the strength coach, for example, is one of recognizing what the players need when they need it. And so what I mean by that, for example, is knowing when to push them, knowing when to push to get the most out of them in their strength and conditioning program, but also realizing when they need rest and recovery. And that has been very, very different this year. And we've seen the players not only respond to it, but their bodies respond to it. And so that's one of the indicators of the no significant injuries. The second thing that deals with that is there's been no COVID-19 outbreak. There's been no large number of tests positive back where the players have been missed any significant time in the practice, and so that's really, really good. It seems like they're doing a really good job of keeping that under control. And they've been testing twice a week. This coming week, I believe this coming Sunday, they'll start in a pre-game testing routine that'll ramp up to 3 times a week. It believe that this team, this training staff, the doctors and medical advisors have it under control, so that out of this, at the state of the team right now, I believe they're in great shape physically, great shape mentally, and also great shape in the face of this pandemic. So 11 days from kickoff, I'm really pleased with where we're seeing this Alabama team. And it looks like that they'll be prepared and ready for this Missouri team to face the first game of the year. Now, as we're continuing, today is Tuesday the 15th, so what we're in now is not a camp, but a game preparation type. So they're going to practice 15th, 16th, and 17th. I think they'll give Friday as a walkthrough like they would before game. Then they'll have a Saturday. There won't be a scrimmage this Saturday. Maybe a Saturday off, like an off week. I'm not sure. They may be using that Saturday like a bye week and getting ready to hit the ground running Sunday with testing and then preparation next week for the game. So that's kind of the state of the team where we are right now. But overall, this team looks good. And I talked to someone this week that said these words to me. This team, it really looks so good right now that barring any injuries or unforeseen circumstances, this team has a chance to really contend for another national championship. So we look forward to seeing that come to place when it takes place on the field. If all this preparation goes has worked like we think it will, and the team stays healthy, there's no reason that this Alabama squad will have any problem contending for another national championship. Well, the second segment here, I want to focus on the offense and what do we see in the scrimmage and review the scrimmage of last Saturday, the 12th. What came out of the offense? We had Coach Saban talked about some things, and we've all heard what he said about how the offense looked good and that sort of thing, and they made some progress. I want to delve a little deeper in the different areas of the offense. It's no doubt that all 3 quarterbacks played well and made and showed marked improvement in this scrimmage. You want to see improvement from the previous game time situations. You want to see the quarterbacks improve, and they all did. Mac Jones appears to me, and I was just saying, in my opinion, has solidified himself as the starter and the head of this offensive football team. He seems to be a great leader. He seems to have really worked hard on his throws, on his play calling and implementation, making the right reads. And so it really looks really good in going forward as the leader. I would go ahead and say, and there's been no depth chart release, so this is DC's opinion, but in my opinion, I believe he solidified himself as the starter this year. We'll see how what Coach Saban thinks about that in the days ahead. Bryce Young looks like be the freshman that we all thought he could be. He's phenomenal talent, very athletic, did a really good job in the last scrimmage, had a good outing. It looks like he's also on the path to get some significant playing time. And I'm not talking about a 2-headed monster type football quarterback scenario, but I'm talking about an opportunity for him to get in the game. I look for him to get in the game at critical times during the year, not just for a mop-up duty, but to get in the game for different roles and make some plays that'll benefit this team, that he'll benefit from. And I believe there has been a competition there. It's been good for Mac Jones, and it's been good for Bryce Young. And don't forget about a third scholarship quarterback, and that's Paul Tyson, great-grandson of Bear Bryant. Paul Tyson has held his own. He worked really hard in the offseason on his throws, and he's looked really well when he's given opportunity to move the ball with the offense. So, I think we're pretty good set with these 3 quarterbacks. Look forward to see how they're going to be able to run the team and what kind of playing time each one of them gets. Right behind the quarterbacks, you got running backs, and we've got really, really good depth this year at running back. Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, seniors coming back for their final year of eligibility. Both of them poised to really make a big difference in their playing time this year. Really make a big difference in the significance of the running game, and it looks like the intent is to build on what Najee Harris finished off in that game against Michigan, is to feed him the ball, give him opportunities to make plays with the ball. Brian Robinson is a really good talent. I believe he'll run the ball well. The question mark behind them is what of the young backs will get playing time? Who's going to fight that out? We know you got Trey Sanders, who's a redshirt freshman, had a medical condition last year with his knee that's come back. He's been slowed a little bit with some hamstring injury, but nothing significant that'll keep him off the field, we hope. So he has opportunity to gain some that third back playing time. Then you got the three freshmen, I like to call them, in Kyle Edwards, Jace McClellan, and Roydell Williams. My understanding is Jace McClellan has been really doing a good job in that role, but all three of them have been doing good and might find themselves in a position to play either in the running back spot or on special teams. So that running back spot being really good depth this year is going to help along the way. The offensive line out of this scrimmage might be the best offensive line that we put on the field in quite some time. The only question mark on the offensive line remains to be, is Landon Dickerson going to play center or is he going to play right guard? You know, the philosophy of Coach Saban is to put your best 5 offensive linemen on the field, whatever that means. And it's great when you have players that can work in different areas. And Landon Dickerson has been one that really works good at center or guard. So it looks like there's 3 people vying for a spot to get in that starting 5. Chris Owens, Emil Ikior, and Darren Delacourt. So I would say my opinion would be that the one of those 3 that wins out to be that 5th player will determine where Landon Dickerson's going to play. If it's one of the centers and Chris Owens and Delacourt, I look for Landon Dickerson to move over to guard and play there opposite one of those centers. If it's Emil Ikior, then I look for Landon Dickerson to move over to center and play that center position alongside Emil Ikior at the right guard. Right now, based on what I can tell, it's a very, very close race. If I had to give anyone an edge, I believe Emil Ikior might have just a slight edge. So it'll be interesting to see what that starting line looks like on our first game against Missouri. I think we'll see that gel together some next week. So maybe by this time next week, we'll kind of have an idea on who's getting the most playing time at that starting line position. Well, finally on the offense out of this scrimmage, you got to talk about the playmakers. And I know I talked about some freshmen that's been stepping up and some other players that stepped up, but today I think we got to give credit where credit is due. And in this past scrimmage, the 2 playmakers that stood out had to be the seasoned veterans, Devonta Smith and Jaylen Waddle. Both those players, Devonta Smith and Jaylen Waddle, ran crisp routes. They had big plays. They had explosive plays. They blocked when they didn't have the ball and just did everything that you could ever want a player on your team to do. They've been good leaders. So I look for Devonta Smith and Jaylen Waddle to really make some plays this year. Who's that going to be, that guy to go in with them? Is it going to be John Mechie? Is it going to be Slade Bolden, or could it be the newcomer in the freshman Javon Baker? Could be any of those 3. Could be all of them on the field at some point in time. But to be honest, the playmakers in Devonta Smith and Jaylen Waddle that made in that scrimmage just stood out above the rest. So I think overall on offense, review from the scrimmage, the offense played really good. I think they had some plays that were very head-turning plays, both in the passing game and the running game. And it's for sure a true statement that this offensive line, at this time of the year, is playing as one of the best offensive lines that I've seen at Alabama. Well, overall, the offense is in good shape. Looking forward to see how it transitions into gameplay this coming week as we get ready for the game against Missouri. Well, in this third and final segment, welcome back to listening to the podcast. We're so glad you tune in here to the DC Capstone Report. In this final segment, we're going to talk about the defense and what it would look like for the defense in scrimmage. Well, I want to start off by just talking about something that I think if you've heard about this, you may be a little concerned about. And I want to try to talk to you in a way that maybe don't be so concerned. Coach Saban talked about this lack of communication on defense. When you hear that lack of communication, a lot of us, me included at first, goes back to last year in the communication from the coordinator to the defensive coaches to the players on the field to get the right plays and that sort of thing. But what my understanding from people that I spoke with at the scrimmage was it was not so much a coordinator, defensive coach communicating to the field that was a problem. This type of communication we're talking about was a lack of communication at times, not all the time, a lack of communication with the young defensive backs. For example, in these schemes, it's very intricate. The schemes that the Coach Saban runs, the defensive backs, who to cover, when to cover, and what to look at, and it's up to the defensive backs to get themselves in the correct positions on who to cover and who to pass off to. And I think the mistakes were made, or the lack of communication came in passing them off to the wrong person or passing them off to a person who was not in position, and just made the wrong reads. And that's the type of lack of communication that Coach Saban was referring to. Now, in my mind, that's correctable. That comes with experience, that comes with teaching, and that can be corrected if you have great athletic players in place. Those athletes can make plays, but they've got to be in the right position to make the plays. So it would be concerning to me if it was still that lack of communication coming from the sidelines to the field. But I don't think we're going to have that this year. With Dylan Moses in there, with the Christian Harris's playing beside him, and then with Shane Lee's experience from last year calling plays, I don't think we're going to have that as long as that play can get communicated well to the defensive backs. And I hope that'll be corrected this week in practice. I'm sure that's something they'll concentrate on. Another part of the defense that was looked very good and consistent was the play of the defensive line, the interior defensive line, and the middle linebackers. I mentioned the middle linebackers already with Dylan Moses, Christian Harris, Shane Lee, Josh McMillan, Ali Kehoe, others that are vying for position in there, playing really well. We got some good depth this year. We got some young freshmen that are going to come along, so there's a lot of good depth there, and that showed in some of these scrimmages. It showed Saturday in the scrimmage. The defensive linemen as well, other than LeBron Ray being nicked up, everybody has been doing really good, stepped up. My favorite, I always talk about Christian Barmore. He is continuing to play well, did so in scrimmage. But another young player that got some experience last year that's really done well this year so far is that Eboigbe, Justin Eboigbe. He's done really, really, really good job, and I think he's got some playing time ahead of him in the rotation. Great that we can talk about a rotation. We've got so many good defensive linemen that we have a chance to rest them and rotate them. Some of the best teams that Alabama has put on the field has been defensive teams where we have really good defensive line play when we interchange. It's like plug and play. And I don't think last year we were able to do that. And this year, as long as we stay healthy, I believe this defensive line is going to be able to be just like that we'll be able to rotate and get people, get them in the positions that they need to be in. Well, that brings us to the final part of this defensive scrimmage review, and I want to talk about one particular player. He's a freshman. I've heard a lot of people talk about this young man, and at first I thought it was just building somebody up before they've taken the field. But every scrimmage, every practice, every time I've talked to someone that's a knowledge, that knows what's going on, they've always singled out this young man. That young man is an outside linebacker, Will Anderson Jr. And in my opinion, I've heard it over and over and over so much from so many people that it must be true. We haven't seen it translate on the field yet, so I'll reserve my judgment, and your judgment can be reserved till you see him play. But what I've been told is that Will Anderson Jr. is an outside linebacker, stands out, turns heads, and looks like to be the real deal as a pass rusher and as an outside linebacker. So I look for him to play significantly. I know that's a thin position. We got only Ben Davis and Christopher Allen come back with any playing time, and they don't have significant playing time. So I think probably Ben Davis and Christopher Allen might get the start. Will Anderson will play some, and then we'll have others that are in the rotation as well. But really look for this kid, Will Anderson. The reason I talk him up here is we haven't seen him play yet. Everybody says, well, wait till you see somebody play before you praise him so much. Well, I've heard from several people this week, but the one thing they always talked about him and how he stood out. But the one thing I heard that made me think about this might be, I heard the word generational defensive player. Could break Derek Thomas' sack record if he stays. But I heard one person say this week that really caught my ear. And if you're out there, you're an Alabama fan, and you know who this person is, you know what I'm talking about. He said he's the type of talent as a David Palmer. If you know David Palmer, he was an offensive talent, but he was an amazing athletic offensive player that you had to see him to believe it. And I believe that's what they were referring to in Will Anderson Jr. So I can't wait for him to take the field and play his first game so we can see if he is the real deal that everybody has described him to be. Well, that's all with the DC Capstone Report today. Glad to be here 11 days before the kickoff against the Missouri Tigers. So we'll be back next week. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, share it. Share it with your friends, and then tune in next Tuesday for our pregame podcast on the Alabama-Missouri game. Thanks. Have a great day, and roll Tide.